Good evening and welcome to the LaRouche Movement's weekly battle report. Today is Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. I'm Michelle Aaron, your host. While world leaders, billionaires, and sycophants of those billionaires gather this week at Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum, perhaps they're cheering on a January 19th report by Oxfam titled Resisting the Rule of the Rich, Protecting Freedom from Billionaire Power, which report shows that over the past year, wealth accumulated by the richest tripled in speed, that there are now 3,000 billionaires in the world headed towards becoming trillionaires. Perhaps they are signing contracts and other agreements that will further subvert the rules of natural law, violate sovereignty of nations, violate the principle of the consent of the governed, violate the obligation of leaders to look out not for the richest and most powerful, but for the poor and most vulnerable. While this is going on amongst a teeny tiny group of people, is the rest of the world in support of their objectives? Of course not. For one thing, nations of the global majority of the population of the world have not money per se, but development on the mind. Last year, China's investment in the Belt and Road Initiative increased by 75% in projects like mining, energy, technology, education, healthcare, increasing standards of living, improving people's lives. And the Belt and Road Initiative is engaging more than 140 countries. Nations of the West. In these nations, real physical concerns like the price and availability of food, shelter, and fundamental freedoms like the freedom of speech are at the fore. People are out in the streets demonstrating the collapse of their means of survival. A shining light in this crisis or moment of opportunity is that there is someone who knows what to do. Of course, it is the LaRouche movement. How to end wars, how to reorganize the system, how to set a course for the good, and to have the courage to lead and demand that change. The LaRouche movement has the track record of consistent leadership, consistent good ideas. These ideas have often been championed by political campaigns. Lyndon LaRouche's 8 runs for U.S. president, the recently launched candidacy for U.S. president by Diane Sare, past and present campaigns around the world by Helga Zepp-LaRouche in Germany, Jacques Cheminade in France, Tom Gillisberg in Denmark, and many more. Also, of course, the consistent quality of intelligence of the Executive Intelligence Review Journal and News Service. Tonight's report is going to highlight a couple of initiatives of the campaign, the candidacy of Diane Sare for U.S. President, and also share with you several international press items that show the effect of this track record and the interest in the views of the LaRouche movement. All of these things occurring just within the past week. So first, let's hear a little bit from Diane Sare from her latest TikTok video to get this quality of extra insight, something that others may be missing, but that's truthful and very important. We're going to get a little bit of what Diane had to say about the present summit in Davos.
What's going on at Davos? We know that President Trump is attending with 5 of his cabinet members, including Scotty Bessent, the Soros man, Marco, otherwise known as Narco Rubio, and Politico had an article saying, well, it used to be Greta Thunberg and the Me Too movement, now it's MAGA. I have to tell you, and I am a candidate for President of the United States, an independent, my name is Diane Sare, that these are different sides of the same coin. It's all a delusion. No one there is speaking of the future. I don't know if they have a single representative of an African nation there. They may have a token African from somewhere, but if you were concerned about the future, you would say the continent of Africa is going to be home to 2.5 billion people by 2050. Shouldn't we be collaborating with the leaders of those nations to end colonialism, to plan new cities, new rail? Shouldn't we be planning new cities in the United States? We need about 150 at least. I think it's more like 500 to have the standard of living we should. Nuclear power plants in the United States. Instead, the American people are just being squeezed. We're just a little conduit through which money is flowing to the same billionaires who, by the way, are now accumulating money at a rate something like triple the pace before. We need reality. We need to bankrupt Wall Street. Money does not make the world go round. Ideas make the world go round. Ideas as they are implemented and turned into reality by intelligent, skilled people, which we should have in abundance in the United States. And we need a crash program to develop that. So let's not keep bailing out Wall Street and the billionaires. Forget Davos, the Davos dollhouse. We don't need it. We need to bankrupt Wall Street, reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act, and actually build real infrastructure, which gives the American workforce more power over nature.
Now let's go right to a field initiative of the Sare presidential campaign that occurred this past week. Last weekend, activists around the country mobilized around a beautiful leaflet written by Sare last week titled, "How Shall We Renew Our Nation?" Remembering Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on his 97th birthday. And you're strongly encouraged to read the statement in its full. I particularly appreciated the following brief excerpt. If we desire justice, we have to refuse to participate in injustice. This means standing up against any word or action that would portray another human being as less than human. So now let's go to our video. Diane Sare published the following video showing volunteers out across the nation getting out her statement for Martin Luther King Day, and we think you should see it.
Hey, this is Mike and Kunle coming to you from the Martin Luther King Peace Rally and Walk and March in Washington, D.C. Getting out Diane's statement announcing her presidential campaign, Diane Sare running, so people do not have to be complicit in an unjust process. They don't have to give their consent to either of the two parties, that they have an alternative.
Hello, this is Tim Rush.
Mary Jane Freeman.
Of the Sare for U.S. President campaign. We're in front of the Douglas Community Center in Leesburg, Virginia, joined here by Frederick himself, who would definitely be endorsing what we're doing and what Diane's campaign.
He'd be one of our first diplomats.
Absolutely. There was a boisterous march from downtown Leesburg, this is Northern Virginia, to this Douglas Community Center earlier today. We've been able to circulate roughly 200 of the leaflet issued by Diane Sare for the day, How Shall We Renew Our Nation, Remembering Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on his 97th birthday. We had nobody return a leaflet. Vast numbers of people grabbed it eagerly. No one else had anything to say. Everybody just reading the headline said, boy, I really want to look into what this is. Other people were just very grateful to see us there. I was telling people that I was there at the 1963 March on Washington, and that as a 13-year-old, that many people forget that the name of the march was March for Jobs and Freedom. And if Dr. King were alive today, he would be aligning with the BRICS nations, the global South, in reviving the kind of economics that we had in our country under Franklin Roosevelt, and Dr. King would be obviously in the forefront of fighting for those in the United States itself. People, as I say, expressed extraordinary happiness to see that someone was bringing this message here. If you want to add anything.
And I found that what I said was that what Diane is asking people to do is to stand up, as Martin did. Whether it's Gaza, or Iran, or Minnesota, Americans can stand up just like others are doing. So lots of interest. Very happy that she's an independent.
Hello, this is Harrison. We are here on at a Martin Luther King Day rally that took place in this church in East Harlem, and I thought it was very good. They opened it up with a quote from Martin Luther King, where he said that there is no separation between civil rights and peace, and they're actually intertwined. And then the discussion, there was some music, gospel music. Some of us kind of sang along with that. Then there was another discussion from the pastor of this church, and that you need both mercy and justice. And like that, and like the concepts of civil rights and peace, mercy and justice are also intertwined. You can't have one without the other. So right now, we are organizing people on the leadership qualities that Martin Luther King Jr. embodied by Diane Sare and Jose Vega's campaign. Now people are coming out. They were really inspired by these activities. And this is our effort to make America sane and make America good again. And this is Harrison Alfred.
Good morning, everyone. This is Joe in Houston here. We're at the parade is about ready to get started. This is the parade honoring Dr. Martin Luther King, a heroic man who walked in the footsteps of Christ, and to be the soul and the conscience of our nation at a time when it was losing its way. We've been passing out leaflets for Diane Sare here, and I want to point that big shiny building behind me. Once housed the most profitable Fortune 500 corporation in the world, Enron. One day Enron crashed and burned, and it's a wonderful metaphor for what's getting ready to happen in the whole dollar-based financial system. Now, the crash of the dollar system doesn't mean the end of the world, but it could, because certain money interests want to preserve that rotten system through war, even nuclear war. So Diane has declared months early, and we've gotten out hundreds of leaflets to very good response. And now we're going to enjoy a little bit of the parade here. Signing off from Houston, Texas, Sare for president. Thank you.
Thank you guys from Houston, New York, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., and there were leafleters out in other places throughout the country as well. If you go out and distribute leaflets over the coming week, please snap a couple photos or do a selfie video. Doesn't have to be fancy, and send it in to info@LaRoucheOrganization.com. Now to an initiative from EIR.news, Executive Intelligence Review, to get the word out there. As we reported last week, EIR hosted on January 12th an incredible roundtable discussion titled, "It's Worse Than You Think: The Implications of the Attack on Venezuela and How to Bring the World Back from the Brink." In order to help circulate this material, EIR has produced an edited version of the proceedings with an introduction by Daniel Burke. We'll watch that introduction now.
Hello. You're watching the highlights of the January 12th Executive Intelligence Review Emergency Roundtable discussion with the title, "It's Worse Than You Think: The Strategic Implications of the Attack on Venezuela and How to Bring the World Back from the Brink." 10 different experts participated from the Americas, Eurasia, and Africa, representing long experience and tested judgment in international affairs. Among the discussants were Mrs. Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the editor-in-chief of Executive Intelligence Review and the founder of the Schiller Institute, Dr. Naledi Pandor, former Minister of International Relations and Cooperation for the Republic of South Africa, as well as the chairwoman of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Professor Zhang Weiwei, Professor of International Relations at Fudan University in Shanghai, former Ambassador Chaz Freeman, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, among other diplomatic posts, the director and academic supervisor of the Institute of World Military Economy and Strategy in Moscow, Dmitry Trenin, and Donald Ramotar, former president of Guyana. There were several other leading people who were involved, including Graf Hans Christoph von Sponeck, the former UN Assistant Secretary General, Congresswoman Maria de los Angeles Huerta, former Mexican Congresswoman, and Dennis Small of Executive Intelligence Review. I invite you to watch this and to get a picture of where we think the discussions need to go in order to bring about a new international security and development architecture. Thank you very much. I'm Daniel Burke.
Okay, so as you can see, that introduction will help you to get this video across to people in your network who you may wish to send it to watch the full thing, and just give them the sense of what they're about to watch. So please circulate the video, and any responses that you get or questions, anything, please send in your comments. Now to several items of LaRouche in the press. First, on that roundtable discussion, China's famous Fudan University, based in Shanghai, posted a report, a news report article on the January 12th emergency roundtable, which they described was convened by the world-renowned magazine Executive Intelligence Review. And they certainly highlight that one of the speakers was the dean of the China Institute at Fudan University, Professor Zhang Weiwei, who spoke there as the Chinese representative on the panel of nearly 20 senior political and strategic experts from all over the world. And they included a screenshot showing many of the speakers, the caption under which emphasized the role of EIR magazine in global policy making since its founding in 1974 by American economist and political activist Lyndon LaRouche. They say the Executive Intelligence Review is an information journal focusing on the global strategic analysis and policy research. It analyzes major international issues from a cross-regional and interdisciplinary perspective, providing policymakers, experts, scholars, and readers concerned with the common future of humanity with an analytical framework independent of mainstream Western narratives through in-depth reports, situation assessments, and strategic dialogues. I think that's quite an accurate and thorough description of the journal. They say, after 50 years of development, EIR has become a strategic information reference platform with significant international influence. Okay. Now we're going to briefly show some footage from 3 different interviews given this past week by representatives of the Schiller Institute and LaRouche movement. We include links to the full interviews for your perusal in our video description. First, we see on January 16th, Jacques Cheminade, president of Solidarité et Progrès and former candidate for president of his country, who was one of the speakers on the program France in the Chaos of the World. Also, Sébastien Peramoni was on that discussion. That program was hosted by Francois Martin, a geostrategist and essayist. And in this episode, they discuss the following issue: financial globalism and international high finance. Next, see Tom Gillisberg, January 17th, on the Lebanon-based Arabic language Al Mayadeen TV channel, where he was invited on to discuss the Trump administration's ambitions toward Greenland, of which his country, Denmark, actually has the legal rights to. Next, on January 19th, here is Sébastien Peramoni interviewed on China's French language network to offer the perspective of the Schiller Institute on how to restore global trust in an era of transformation. And in the interview, Peramoni outlined in full the mission and principles of the Schiller Institute. And I have a couple excerpts from his comments. He said, "It is through development that we will create the conditions for peace. It is through development that we will give billions of people the opportunity to live in dignity. A true paradigm shift is needed, a rebirth. This is the only bulwark to prevent the darkest hours of history from becoming our present once again." And I thought this particular point was notable. He said, France and the European Union in general must understand that China is not a systemic rival, and we must stop listening to those who advocate de-risking, decoupling of our economies from China. In a conception where humanity is one and indivisible, or as the Chinese say, we all live under the same sky. In that world, we must cooperate. So in just 4 examples of media coverage from the past several days, we see interest in the analysis and views of the LaRouche movement from French, Chinese, and Arabic language news stations. We saw earlier in this episode a couple of examples of the intervention through the campaign of U.S. presidential candidate Diane Sare. So join the process of intervention, get out there and organize. Any questions or support that you need in the organizing, reach out. You can email in at info@laroucheorganization.com. And please send in your reports. We know there's more going on out there than we might already have in hand. So send in those reports so that we can highlight them, feature them next week. Thank you for